is up, everyone? Welcome to another NerdBall fantasy football show. I am your humble host, dendrologist specializing in the conservation of the endangered Robert Woods, and astronaut aboard the Pitt St. Moon Expedition, baby, Pete Rogers, and I am joined by fellow nerd, Duckfather, and runner-up on the Great Russell Wilson Cooking Show, resident old man Clark Barnes. Clark, how you doing today?
Doing great, Pete. How are you?
I am well. How was your week 5 so far?
So far, so good. Got a lot riding on Monday night here, so we'll just see how it goes.
What do you have? Who are you looking for?
I think I just need Mark Andrews to not score fewer than 30 fewer points than Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
For the league I care about. That's about it. So as long as Lamar Jackson doesn't completely ignore Mark Andrews and have a Josh Allen-esque game, I should be fine. How about yourself?
You should be set. I just need Jack Doyle and Paris Campbell to not combine for 8 PPR points.
That's rough.
I feel like it could be done, though. I feel neither of those guys have quite been a reliable fantasy producer so far this season. So I'm feeling decent about it. I'm sure future Pete is going to chime in later in the show and be like, you're an idiot. Jack Doyle went for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Paris Campbell had 80 yards on top of that.
It's possible, Pete. Last week, I needed Mike Williams to score fewer than 4 PPR points, and a God smiled upon me.
God did smile upon you, because he then against the Browns this week just went right back to his old ways of wide receiver 1. So you really were blessed that week, man.
Glad I waited on sending that text to my league mate who I beat. I was like, I'm glad that Williams is back to being good now that it doesn't matter. What a week, though.
What a week. I mean, yeah, I have to say, I'm kind of sad that I missed the Browns Chargers game, because that game did sound absolutely insane. But yes, lots of action went down in week 5. And of course, we are going to run through the highlights and the lowlights with handing out some props and flops. And I will start us off, because I have to give props. We have been waiting for this all year long, Clark, and we finally got it. Kyle Pitts, looking like the tight end 1, greatest tight end ever prospect that we all thought he would be this year, against the Jets in London. And all it took was both Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage to not be playing, to not even travel with the team. And Kyle Pitts finally was able to capitalize on his just profound talent and post a tight end 1 outing with 119 yards and a touchdown on 9 targets, and just making plays all over the field. So, with a performance like that, and my seat aboard the Pitt St. Moon Expedition rocket, reserved for the last month and a half, had to give props where props were due.
Yeah, that's good. Against the Jets, Kyle Pitts.
We're taking whatever we can, Clark.
Fantasy. I think for the Pitts believers, what you can take solace in is Pitts has looked pretty good while playing all season. It's just that he's been saddled with the albatross that is Matt Ryan. In this game, he made just a lot of plays, I think, because they forced the ball to him. He and Cordarrelle Patterson were about the only things going for the Falcons, and that was enough to put the Jets away. So it's so funny that I have been grouped into the non-believers of Kyle Pitts just because I think that he'll finish as the tight end 7 or 8 this year, which is still amazing.
No, it means you're not a believer, Clark.
I know, but I think that's probably where he's going to end up. But the future's looking good. These are all good signs for long-term Kyle Pitts. He looks athletic out on the field, full of the most athletic people in the world. So it translated from college like the believers hoped it would. So good win for the Falcons. And, like I mentioned on Twitter, I love taking shots at the New Jersey teams just because I'm,
why not? They're right for it.
Yeah. And the Jets, it's not fun anymore.
No.
So I just hope the Jets fans can find something else to do with their time and don't take it too hard.
Yeah, no, the Jets look just legit bad. Yeah, I mean, I will ride this Kyle Pitts high for this week, but it's certainly not a sign of like the floodgates are open and now he is going to return the elite, top 3 tight end value that some people on this podcast had him ranked as, not pointing fingers, but definitely me. Because he played, despite the fact that the Falcons needed Kyle Pitts, him and Cordell Patterson were the only like healthy pass catchers. He still played his second lowest snap share of the year. He played 69% of the snaps. So like nice. So like, even when the Falcons like needed him, they still didn't play him that much, which is blows my mind. I don't understand the Falcons usage of Kyle Pitts, but I'll take this. I am going to ride this weekend and be very pleased the fact that it all came together and we saw the potential, and the Falcons are heading into their bye. And so maybe this bye allows for we build off of that performance and they come back in week 7 against the Dolphins. Maybe we see a brand new Falcons offense, one that fully utilizes Kyle Pitts. And since I just traded for Calvin Ridley, let's get a little more Calvin Ridley in there too. Who are you handing props out to, Clark, for this week?
So my prop this week is to Rondale Moore. This is someone that we talked about into the run-up of the season. It was one of Nick's guys that he turned me on to, and I've just been kind of sitting on him. Injuries have forced me to play more and pay more attention to him this year. He's only the wide receiver 26 right now, but I'm giving him more of props for what we're seeing on the field. Moore isn't the biggest guy in the world, and he's playing in what has turned out to be an incredibly crowded Arizona Cardinals wide receiver room. So props to the Cardinals, like sticking with Christian Kirk and then having faith that AJ Green still had some good football in him. Because they were right. Christian Kirk is playing really well, and AJ Green is playing very well, I think, for what they're paying him and what you can expect out of. I hate saying this as someone who's much older, but like a 30-something-year-old wide receiver. Rondale Moore is showing just electric quickness, and that just because it makes the analogy easier, not because I'm comparing him to this player, but that level of vision and quickness, kind of like Alvin Kamara, to where it doesn't look like he's trying very hard, but no one else is able to get in front of him and tackle him very easily. He had 6 targets, 5 catches, was absolutely robbed of a touchdown. The refs were like conspiring against Rondale Moore all game. They said the
refs were definitely playing against Rondale in fantasy, and they're like, "Oh, was that a really a touchdown? Now we're gonna roll against it. My team can't take the 6 points that he's gonna score."
Yeah, caught a beautiful like scramble drill ball going out of bounds where he clearly caught it and dragged his feet, and the refs like, "Nope, not a catch." The booth review, coming in buzzed from New York. Anyway, the guy just looks amazing. He's probably for fantasy terms this year, probably no better than like wide receiver 2-3 territory flex. But this is it's really good for people that were excited about him, and it's really good for people that are excited about him long terms. If you have a keeper league and drafted him super late, or if you have a dynasty league or something like that, he is really, really showing out. And AJ Green and Christian Kirk are not sure things for the Cardinals next year, so it's been super fun to watch him play. And I always like when someone who we've called on the podcast, and especially someone else, this is Nick's boy, really hits, because Moore has just been super fun to watch this year.
Yeah. And the Cardinals are like so talented at the receiver position that DeAndre Hopkins has been like kind of like an afterthought, which is absurd. He's like the wide receiver, I think like 15, when normally, that's just not his game. Like he's a legit elite top end wide receiver fantasy. It's not because he's been playing poorly, it's just because the Cardinals have so many other weapons now for Kyler Murray to get the ball to. They're a much more balanced offense, which is better for real football. So yeah, Rondale Moore he has that ability, and the Cardinals are using him, taking advantage of his ability to use him all over the field and getting him touches no matter like in any way they can. He had 5 catches last week against the 49ers, but also had 3 carries for 38 yards. So you love the fact that like they are just getting him the ball in any way they can. He's 53% rostered in sleeper leagues. So I snagged him back in week 2, and I've just been kind of holding on to him similarly to you. And I'm very excited to see his role reemerge again, and I will be confidently playing him and keeping him in my rotation of wide receivers as we move forward. You can't give
on Hopkins. One note really quick.
Yeah.
So just watching the games, DeAndre Hopkins is still absolutely the wide receiver 1.
Oh yeah.
And amazing. And when Murray needs a play, he goes to him. There's other dudes that can catch the ball this season. And so I think Kyler Murray's doing the right thing, spreading the love around. So don't panic about Hopkins. It's just he's no longer the 160 target, monster.
And honestly, he might the everything is clicking for the Cardinals offense, right? They really haven't hit anything that is truly slowing them down, obviously, because they're 5-0. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do come across tough waters and maybe play a couple of close games, or if there is a competition late in season for the NFC West or for just whoever's going to take the NFC, maybe we see Kyler Murray direct a little bit of more attention to DeAndre Hopkins, like you were saying, because we saw it against the 49ers. Like when they needed to score, Murray threw like the back shoulder fade to Hopkins, and Hopkins just ripped it out of Josh Norman's hands, basically. Like Hopkins is a big man and can still win those jump balls. And so I think you're totally right. Hopkins managers don't panic. And in fact, like he's very comfortably performing at a high level for you. And that could be even going higher if this Cardinals offense kind of reaches some murky waters and Murray maybe has to rely on him like he has in the past. You can't give props without handing out flops. And I learned again my lesson, Clark, that you never trust the Jaguars to do anything that you want them to do. After hyping up Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault all week long, I had them as my roasts in my roast and ghost article this week, because I just thought, look, the Titans secondary has been absolute trash. They've given up the most yards, most touchdowns to wide receivers. DJ Chark is now injured. This passing game has now narrowed itself to just really 2 stud wide receivers. And we saw Laviska Shenault get used and targeted down the field against the Bengals. I thought the recipe was there for this Jaguars passing game to funnel through Laviska and funnel through Marvin Jones. Well, obviously I was wrong, because it was Tavon Austin and Jamal Agnew who were the wide receivers that you really wanted to start in fantasy this week for the Jaguars. And even then, they didn't really do much. But Laviska Shenault only having 1 catch on 3 targets and Marvin Jones having 1 catch on 5 targets. Flops to them. And it's just flops to the Jaguars in general, and flops to me for not knowing that I should never trust the Jaguars and never tell people to start to do anything with involving the Jaguars with confidence.
Yeah, it's hard. And I really put this down to just poor coaching. Like, just because you have 3 talented wide receivers and it affords you the luxury to run one of them in the slot, well, when one of those other 3 gets hurt, that doesn't mean you have to take that slot person and put them in the outside wide receiver role, which I am fully confident that Laviska Shenault could learn and do, but he's so good out of the slot. I don't understand why you just wouldn't keep running him out of the slot. Like Lawrence is clearly comfortable taking those easy, I would say kind of like college-like throws to him. And this is just more like miscast usage of Shenault. And, you have to give the Titans credit. They're not terrible, so the Jaguars look terrible. But fortunately, most coaches are moving into an era of no longer strictly looking at like X, Y, and Z roles. But when you have a player who really excels at one, well, don't move him around just because the depth chart changed.
A player who, Laviska Shenault, he did hit his, 1 catch for 58 yards because he broke like 4 different tackles. Like, he is so good. And it's so aggravating that Urban Meyer is too busily distracted with, other things than
lost year again for the
lost
Jags.
year again.
Stop me if you've heard this one before. Lost year again for the Jags.
Maybe we don't go hire old, antiquated college coaches who aren't ready to coach in the NFL. Just a thought. Maybe we don't, build our link our entire franchise revival on Urban Meyer.
It seems, I know it's hard. I know the NFL is hard, and it's super easy to sit in my little office here and talk about how smart I am when I don't have to put anything on the line. I get it. But we can name 3-4 coordinators who've been coordinators in the NFL for a good long time.
Oh yeah.
Who are probably going to be boons to a bad franchise. Yeah, Bieniemy in Kansas City, Dayball in Buffalo, Rule in Carolina. I mean, there are guys who are showing that the NFL's not too fast for them. Mm-hmm. I don't understand going after the old guard in college as your plan.
It makes no sense. The Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy would. I have so much faith that Eric Bieniemy would have this Jaguars offense like actually being productive and looking good.
I mean, like whereas Bill Belichick's like coaching tree has been very hit and miss. That's not Bill Belichick's fault. That's just looking at it. You can say that.
Right.
Andy Reid's coaching tree hasn't been 100%, but it's been pretty good.
It's been pretty damn good. At the very least, they know how to build an offense and take advantage of the offensive pieces that their team has, which the Jaguars certainly are not doing. Who are you giving flops to?
My flops again is, not really based on the statistics, but based on the C's, the visuals, what your eyeballs told you, and that's Baker Mayfield. This is 2 weeks in a row where he's just been totally incapable of making a play when the team needed him to make a play. Now, in the box score, you're going to see some very long touchdowns. Like David Njoku got lost and ran for like a 70-yard touchdown. It was awesome. But one of the reasons the Chargers were able to come back is they started to stuff the run because they could, instead of playing their safety so deep, they could bring them up because Baker Mayfield was no threat. He just was not able to do basic quarterback things. And it's really negatively impacting this offense in games against good teams. In games against bad teams, their defense and rushing is just good enough to get them the win. Like, see what they did against the Vikings, but flops to Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. I wrote about this in my week 5 takeaways on the site, and it's just like, you just can't trust the Browns wide receivers to do anything in fantasy. Like this offense runs the football, and then when they throw, Baker just targets their tight ends, but they throw so minimally that there's really just not any passing work to reliably go around to trust at wide receiver. Rashard Higgins had a touchdown and 29 yards. Donovan Peoples-Jones finally did something and had 70 yards. Of course, Odell did absolutely nothing and only saw 3 targets. So like, I think that Baker maybe doesn't need to tough it out with like this torn shoulder labrum that he has or whatever. It's like, maybe we sit him on I know the Browns are like vying for AFC dominance this year and they feel like they can't sit Baker, but maybe give him just like 1 or 2 games off to try to see if that can heal, because damn, this ground game is so good. And every week Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are just putting up numbers. And if Baker just can like be a halfway competent quarterback and do the Ryan Tannehill play action, hit the open guy, that the Titans have built an offense around, this Browns team would be unstoppable.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, and I should have. I want to be very clear. This isn't like a loss of faith in Baker Mayfield as a player. He is hurt. He hurt his shoulder. That's very important. For
pretty major when you need to throw the ball.
So, I mean, I never thought that he was the greatest in the world, but he's good enough. On a team like this, he is, Kirk Cousins, he's, Jake Plummer. He is plenty good enough to lead this team to victory, but he's hurt, and it's really affecting him. I just saw on ourlads, ourlads.com, if you ever need depth chart information, is just awesome. Case Keenum is their backup. Like, Case Keenum's good enough to get you a couple of games as a backup. He's not fantastic. I mean, he's like Tyler Heineke plus, but that's good enough for a couple weeks.
Yeah. All right. There's some props and flops, and we got lots. We're not done with week 5 because we have lots of news to cover. So let's jump right into the news. And more injuries. Sadly, Saquon Barkley, man, played 6 snaps and then rolled his ankle, and it's being called a low ankle sprain and will likely miss week 6. And it's just a bummer, Clark. It's a bummer that Barkley just can't seem to stay healthy as he's looking better and better and better. Then something just sets him back.
Yeah. On this, the positive side is it had nothing to do with his previous injury.
Yes.
It was kind of not a freak occurrence because these things happen, but like he just stepped on someone and his ankle went the wrong way. Folks are saying, like Dr. Edwin Porras, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the football injury Twitter is saying sprained ankles take about a week. So maybe he'll miss a week, but this has nothing to do with his knee. And while it sucks, it is an injury that happens frequently and people recover just fine. It's not a high ankle sprain that lingers forever. People are saying he's going to be okay.
Yeah. And the Giants play the Rams next and then play the Panthers in week 7. So
might as well just sit him for the Rams game anyway.
Yeah, let's just sit Saquon. Let's give him the time he needs to rest. And honestly, like as a Saquon Barkley fantasy manager, I would love for them to sit him against the Rams and against the Panthers. And then week 8, they play the Chiefs. I would love a healthy Saquon to take on the Chiefs and that abysmal defense. If you are like Devonte Booker for the Giants was the back who came in and handled most of the workload when Saquon left against the Cowboys. He had 16 carries, 42 yards, and also had 3 catches and 16 yards and scored a touchdown both on the ground and through the air. Like, he is not a bad week waiver wire ad. You stream him for the week that Saquon is out. I know the Rams have a formidable defense, but they aren't. People have been able to score on him, and just the volume might be something if you need to get like kind of a flex RB3 with some RB2 upside. Devonte Parker's not a bad waiver target this week.
Yeah, Booker looked okay. I wouldn't be running out to add him, but he's probably going to get most of the work on an uncreative offense. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, if you're looking for that kind of like RB4, if you have a deep flex spot, then he's not a bad guy.
You should enforce, like, if a team, like, if you have $1,000 fab, I would throw like a $50 bid out there. I wouldn't let somebody get him for $1.
Yeah, for sure. Make people up bid for him. Another running back injury, which I know, Clark, you have much more waiver wire feelings for. Clyde Edwards-Helaire against the Bills suffered an MCL sprain, sadly, which I will say it looked a lot worse. He had to be like carried off the field. So MCL sprain is per Adam Schefter, he's supposed to be out for a few weeks. That is much better than what looked like possibly like an ACL and a whole knee destruction. So we'll take that like that. We appreciate that, fantasy gods. But I know you're thinking it is all fab all day for Daryl Williams this week.
Yeah, and I posted that in Slack before I heard the good news that it's just going to be a few weeks. But the coaching staff has already leaned on Daryl Williams to be like the 3-down back or the kind of like super high leverage play back while they're trying to, it looks like, get Edwards-Helaire more acclimated to the game and maybe take a little pressure off of him because he had a high ankle sprain in the preseason. And I think that's not something that people seem to be talking about. So I think for the next few weeks, and while Edwards-Helaire is out, that Daryl Williams is an absolute smash play. He's gonna make it tough to not split time 50-50, I think, when Edwards-Helaire comes back, just because the coaching staff already showed so much trust in him. And I don't think that Jerick McKinnon is going to be much other than the role he's doing now. Plus, I mean, a little bit, because he'll just have to play more. But Daryl Williams is going to be, I think, huge for the next several weeks at least.
Yeah, especially the Chiefs play Washington and their pretty porous defense next week. And so they play Washington, Titans, and Giants. That's a pretty good stretch of 3 teams that you can beat, that their offense is obviously going to do work against. And yeah, I definitely break in favor of Daryl Williams if you're deliberating between Daryl Williams and Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon, he played 24 snaps and ran 22 routes. So he is there just to play this past week against the Bills. So he is there just to be in the passing game. And we know that Patrick Mahomes doesn't really target his running backs. So I think you're right, Clark, that obviously his role will increase slightly with Clyde Edwards-Helaire out, but Jerick McKinnon, I don't think is much more than like, if you're in a deep PPR league and you want to take a flyer on him, by all means. Daryl Williams is definitely the guy to be targeting in this Chiefs backfield, just because, yeah, we've seen him come in and spell Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the red zone for touches. And so like that confidence alone from the coaching staff is a good sign. Yeah,
you make a very good point. I sometimes take the myopic view of everyone's in a 12-team, 2 quarterback or 2 running back plus flex league. If you're in a deeper league, or if you're desperate at running back, Pete, you make a good point. McKinnon is worth going out to get. I wouldn't spend much money on him, but he should see more work. And if it's PPR, especially, you get a little bump because most of his work does come on a lot of design trickeration stuff.
Yep. JuJu Smith-Schuster is now done for the year. Sadly, he suffered a shoulder injury and is now going to have surgery, which will effectively take him out for the year. This will likely put Ray McCloud in to see the to slot work in Pittsburgh, but Don't worry about that. What this really does is this narrows, similarly to how hyped I was about the Jaguars passing game, this narrows the passing tree down for Ben Roethlisberger, because this Steelers offense kind of went back to the well a little bit against the Broncos. They were looking pretty good. Najee Harris got the ball moving on the ground. Ben Roethlisberger was throwing pretty well. And Chase Claypool was the biggest beneficiary of JuJu missing time. He caught 5 of his 6 targets for 130 yards and a touchdown. Even Deontay Johnson, who only saw 2 targets, which is like his absolute career low with Ben Roethlisberger, still managed to turn those 2 targets into 72 yards and a touchdown. So Deontay Johnson just can't stop producing. So I don't necessarily think that this is for me. I'm not running out to add someone from the Steelers receiving core for this because of this injury. Really what I'm saying is if I have Chase Claypool, if I have Deontay Johnson, I am now very confidently starting them as that kind of mid to low end wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside now, because the passing tree is narrowed and because, for as much shit as we've given the Pittsburgh passing game up until this point, they didn't look bad against the Broncos, and the Broncos have a good defense. So credit where credit's due.
Yeah, maybe a bump for Freiermuth, maybe a bump for Eric Ebron if you're super desperate for tight end help.
Sure.
The receiving room is sort of deep for the Steelers, but it's also top heavy. They have those 3 guys that are amazing. I would be surprised if they don't just give more to the tight end, because not to take anything against Ray McLeod, but JuJu Smith is he's very good. I know that we like to give him the Jarvis Landry treatment of all he ever does is get open and catch 3rd down balls for 1st down. It's yeah, but that's hard. Tight ends usually play that role for teams. And I think that's probably where Pittsburgh will go after this. I don't want to interrupt the programming here. Do we have any update on Najee Harris's?
Did Najee Harris have an injury?
It looks like he hurt his ankle, but I'm seeing that it's a calf strain that happened kind of later in the game. Tried to tough it out for a play and ran a little Texas route. So that's like your little zigzag route where you kind of go off 45. Anyway, tried to cut, obviously could not, and then was out for the rest of the game. So still put up a very good game statistically. I just haven't seen an update on it. That is definitely something to keep an eye on, because another beneficiary, as if Najee Harris could take on more work than he is already doing for the Steelers, if JuJu is out, it will be Najee Harris and maybe some Benny Snell. I don't think enough to go pick him up, but we'll just have to keep an eye on it, because a calf injury could be something very minor, or it could. It's a broad range of outcomes for that.
What I'm seeing is that it was a cramp. He was dealing with some cramping. So hopefully that's just, he pounds some Gatorade. He's ready to go.
What a monster. Dude, Harris has been.
He has been. We talked about this at the beginning of the year, where you're just Najee Harris is going to get so much work and is so good that he will grind out wildly ineffective, productive fantasy stat lines. And he did that for the first 2 to 3 weeks. And now the run game seems to be clicking in too. It's back-to-back weeks where he's rushed for over 4 yards per carry, and his work in the passing game is still there, but it's not as prevalent. And it's really he is looking really good. And now he gets to play Seattle before their bye. Oh, Najee Harris. If you drafted Najee and you've stuck through this as a Najee manager, good for you. You're about to reap the rewards.
And as someone who has, it's been pretty easy to stick through it, because like you said, wildly inefficient, but he's just getting so much work.
So much volume. You can't say no to it. Yeah, for sure. There is the Giants just can't stay healthy. Speaking of which, I know we kind of jumped passed over Saquon Barkley, but I also wanted to quickly mention Kenny Golladay is out for week 6 with a sprained knee. Daniel Jones is going through concussion protocol as to whether or not he'll play week 6. And then also, Kadarius Toney left with I think an ankle injury. I'm going to talk about Kadarius Toney later, so don't worry about it. But that injury I'm not too worried about. But Kenny Galladay's knee taking him out yet again is something to monitor.
Yeah, with Jones is probably going to play just based on who the coach and front office is.
You think Joe Judge is going to just toss him in there?
Oh, brain injury. That's fine. Don't worry about
Joe
it. We'd rather sit you than put your life in peril for a win. I don't feel like that's going to happen. Anyway, Mike Glennon did look okay.
Yeah.
So if Jones does miss, it's a negative, but it's not a falling off the cliff negative necessarily.
You know, it is a falling off the cliff negative necessarily, because we kind of buried the lead here, Clark, because this news happened Thursday night, but this is probably the biggest news out of week 5.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson suffering a finger injury that'll keep him out 6 weeks. Like, that's huge. I feel like because it happened then, it's the fantasy community is kind of maybe moved on or overlooked the fact that Geno Smith is going to be starting for the Seahawks for the foreseeable future, which makes me feel very differently about the Seahawks offense.
Okay. I have nothing against Geno Smith personally, obviously. But why would you go with Geno Smith instead of, one, who wants to have some fun and let Gardner Minshew come in and play in his hometown state? Yeah. Or two, why are you not on the phone with Cam Newton? The Seahawks are not one of the best teams in the league, but they're scrappy and they have a lot of talent on that team. And they're going to be without their starting quarterback for at least 6 weeks, guys. Like, it's an injury to the quarterback's hand where Russell Wilson, like, super tough, sacked more than anyone else in the league since he came into the league and never misses time. Russell Wilson couldn't play.
Right.
So he's going to miss time. I'm still holding on to Cam Newton in a 2-quarterback dynasty because I don't understand.
I am too. I'm holding on to him in my dynasty league too. Because, like, how could Pete Carroll not absolutely love the idea? Mr. Ground and Pound, Pete Carroll be like, just run Cam Newton. Have DJ, have Chris Carson, Cam Newton, have Alex Collins. Just run QB option the entire time. How can Pete Carroll say no to this? Obviously, this is a huge blow to both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. If you have those guys in fantasy, for me, like, Tyler Lockett, unless we see otherwise, basically plummets to like a wide receiver 4 on a weekly basis, because a lot of his value came from, like, his connection with Russell Wilson and their ability to just hit that big play down the field. DK Metcalf is such a huge physical receiver that I think even with someone like Geno Smith throwing him the football, he can still put up production. But like, both of those guys, I'm probably not going to be ranking above a wide receiver 2. And Tyler Lockett, I don't think I'm going to rank above a wide receiver 4, maybe a flex option for the foreseeable future with Wilson out.
Yeah, with Geno Smith under center, I don't know if he's got the personality or the chops to not do what Pete Carroll wants, which is just throw it super short. So disappointed.
It is very disappointing. I know the Seahawks 2 and 3 right now. Like, this might seal their fate.
But they're 2 and 3, but they're good.
Right.
But not missing top 5, but they're good.
But like 4 to 8 weeks without Wilson is, unless they do address their quarterback position, unless they like go for Cam or go for Gardner Minshew would be spicy. I mean, I love me some Cam Newton too. Like, I obviously give me Cam.
But like, just okay. We're a fantasy show, but for fantasy, how would you downgrade DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett with Gardner Minshew in there? Like, they take a hit, but not that much. No, certainly not as much as they take a hit with Geno Smith under center. Geno looked good, but you're also like, I'm not. If you want to get spicy, and you want to try to see if you can buy low on DK Metcalf from the DK Metcalf manager who's panicking right now, send out a trade offer. I never say no to buying players when fantasy managers are absolutely panicking. Okay, finally in the news, after coming in and giving Joe Mixon a little breather as he was recovering from his ankle injury, Samaje Perine has been placed on the Bengals COVID list. So just something to monitor as we move into week 6. If Perine does miss week 6 game and Joe Mixon is still slowly making his way back from his ankle injury, then Chris Evans, who's been involved in the passing game as a running back for the Bengals, is not a bad guy to kind of monitor and maybe add in deeper leagues. But certainly if Samaje Perine, who took the passing game from Joe Mixon this past week. And so if he misses time, but Mixon is healthy, then Mixon returns to the elite RB1 status, in my opinion. If Mixon is still banged up and Samaje Perine is still on the COVID list come week 6, come Sunday,
Chris Evans might have some sneaky PPR value in deeper leagues.
Yeah, and I mean, what I saw out of Samaje Perine is what I am expecting to see out of Daryl Williams in Kansas City. Like, Samaje Perine showed he needs to get the ball more.
He looks
Joe
good.
Mixon has looked good statistically if you don't look at his ratios. When you get the ball 40 times, it works out really well for
the
Najee
Harris symptom.
Yeah. That's totally fair. Totally fair. But Perine looked really good. Yeah, he's going to miss some time probably. I mean, I don't know. I just got to string together 2 tests. Those are super reliable. But I mean, he got us a touchdown. If you started him, he paid off for you.
Yeah.
But I think you'd have to not be paying very good attention to go back to Joe Mixon getting 85% of the work in that backfield.
Yeah.
And hopefully Joe Burrow's okay. Jesus.
Yeah. I think I saw that he came out of the hospital with his throat contusion and everything. He got the A-OK from that. So hopefully he's good. Yeah. They played Detroit week 6. So having a healthy backfield would go a long way because Detroit cannot stop the run. And that would be a beautiful matchup for all running backs involved. All right. Let's turn our attention to week 6, and we're going to talk the worry panic scale and our top waiver wire ads. But before we do that, I wanted to tell you, dear listeners, about our Patreon, patreon.com/nerdballff. We have all kinds of perks for those wishing to join, include joining our staff Discord channel to talk football throughout the season, our Stats and Sit hotline, where you can ask us your most pressing questions and we will get to them ASAP. And you can be able to submit questions to be answered live on any of our podcasts. So if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/nerdballff. Okay. Now, as we do every week, it is time to bring out our patented worry panic scale index to measure just how worried fantasy managers should be about these players. And we are going to turn to Clark for this week, where he has 2 players that we're going to talk about. 1 on the scale is when you're so busy staring at the beautiful changing leaves, you're too busy to even notice that there's anything to be worried about. 5 is you see a haunted house on the hillside, but you're not too scared about it. And 10 is you're strapped down on the rusty operation table and a pantless mutant doctor is wielding a chainsaw talking about how he's going to harvest your organs. Clark, who are we submitting to the panic scale this week?
All right, Pete. On the worry-ometer, panic scale, panic meter, we're going to start it off with Allen Robinson of the Chicago Bears fame. How worried are you about what we've seen from Allen Robinson and the Bears quarterbacks this season?
Oh boy. Let me just start by listing a few facts about Allen Robinson. He hasn't seen 7+ targets since week 1, in which he saw 11. He's gone over 35 yards receiving once this year. Once. Not great. If you're relying on him to even be a wide receiver 2, I know you probably drafted him to be your wide receiver 1, but even at this point, if you have not restructured your team to make Allen Robinson your wide receiver 3 or 4, if you are waiting for him to still give you top 24 production, you are a full 10 on the worry panic scale index, because he is not doing that. I think he probably will have 1 or 2 wide receiver 1 weeks in him as we move forward, and everyone will be like, oh, Allen Robinson is back. He's here. It's clearly just not working with this ever-changing cast at quarterback. And in this Matt Nagy offense, he is not seeing the targets. If he were seeing double-digit targets and still not producing, I'd feel so much more confident in him moving forward. But the fact that he is seeing less than 7 targets since week 1, that's 4 weeks in a row, he's seeing less than 7 targets per game in the Chicago Bears offense that is just chronically behind and needing to throw the ball. I am fully worried. I'm so worried that I traded him in my dynasty league already. I am on a 10 with Allen Robinson.
I think this is fun. You'll just the way that 2 analysts have decided to ride up how they're worried. I put Allen Robinson has a high watermark of 63 yards receiving in week 4 and has been under 40 yards in every game since. So that's 2 different ways to say it. I think yours is better, actually. But yeah, he is not getting targeted very often. I think he had 11 targets with Andy Dalton in week 1. And so
that was great. And everyone was like, yes, this is the Allen Robinson we know and love.
Right. Even if he's not producing, they're throwing the ball to him a ton, and he's very, very good. So he will, law of averages, he'll pay it off. That's not happening. I am a 7 on the worried meter, which is the most worried metered I've ever been on this podcast. Partially because, coming out, the knock against Justin Fields is that he didn't have the quickest processor in the NCAA. And that is something that quarterbacks can get over. And almost every rookie quarterback seems to have a slow processor once you get in the NFL also. So let's keep that in mind. But he's not making the quickest decisions out there. The Bears are a rough and rugged team. They are going to get in some games like they got in last week and won, where they just don't need to score a bunch of points. And when you have, an uncreative play caller who doesn't want to play to his quarterback strengths, that all bodes for, like, we're not going to pass the ball very much. We're going to play defense and run the ball. I don't think this is going to turn around. You nailed it, that he's probably going to have some wide receiver 1 weeks. Like, I see like 70 yards and 2 touchdowns in his future,
Totally.
But when he is no longer startable.
Yeah.
I'm holding in dynasty, but in season long, like, if someone believes, okay, take him. Let's make him a part of the deal.
Yeah. So my dynasty team in one league has started off slow. So I've got into a little bit of rebuild mode. I traded Allen Robinson and Alvin Kamara for Terry McLaurin, Michael Carter, and a second round pick. So nice. Yeah. went into a little rebuild there, but he feels like ripe for the time when you finally decide to bench him. He gives you a wide receiver 1 week, and then you put him back in your lineup, and he's back to being a wide receiver 5. Like, I just can't rank him above like wide receiver 40 until we see something from him.
And everything I'm saying about Fields is short term. That's like this season. Like,
totally.
I'm not worried long term. Yeah. Guy is super talented, did amazing things in college, but like, it's like betting on. Actually, Zach Wilson has looked much worse. We don't need to get into that. Sorry, New Jersey.
Oh, good old New Jersey.
Second.
Yes. Give us your second.
Second player for the Panicometer. And I feel like we've really set this up great, kind of accidentally or not. Second player for the Worryometer is Stefon Diggs, wide receiver 24 in PPR right now, drafted as wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4 this season. Sure. How worried are you about Stefon Diggs?
I'm actually not that worried. I'm like a 2 or a 3. He leads the Bills in targets, leads them in receptions, leads them in yards, leads them in air yards. He has a 27.8 target share and a 38.7% air yard share. Like, he is still a vital member of this Bills offense, and the touchdown regression is coming. He's only scored 1, despite the fact that Josh Allen is 4th in the NFL in touchdown passes. So, and you said it too in your build up to him, he's still the wide receiver 24 in PPR. So, like, yes, he's not playing like the elite wide receiver 1 that you drafted him to be, but even while you're waiting for him to maybe return to form, he's still giving you, mid-tier, low to mid-tier wide receiver 2 production. And so I certainly think that it's not like you're sitting there wasting a spot week in, week out, like Allen Robinson, waiting for him to finally do something. Right now, Stefon Diggs is your wide receiver 2, and you're happy with that because you've changed your offense to take that into consideration. And then when everything clicks for him, which it will, because of the fact that he's still heavily involved in this Bills offense, then you're going to have now multiple wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1s because you've prepared and you've built your team taking this into consideration. So I am certainly not worried. And in fact, if there are people in your league who are worried, send out feelers, send out trades, get him, try to buy him low.
Yeah, I'm with you. We're in agreement on kind of both players this week. So I'm a 3 worried because he is still getting a ton of work. He is in an offense that is still moving the ball and scoring a bunch of touchdowns. Now, the one bone I have to pick with what you said is, well, the touchdown regression, it's coming. Diggs scored 6 touchdowns last year and was like leading the league in yards or something like that, or receptions. Had a ton of work and then a minuscule touchdown number compared to his peers in that like top 5 wide receiver thing. So I don't know if this is
it's true. It might not. You are right there. That's a good point to bring up. His touchdown dependency last year was like crazy low among the elite wide receivers.
I do think he's going to bounce back though. And 6 touchdowns still does feel super low, like especially for an offense that throws deep so often. He makes a better turn and run after being so surprised that he's wide open. He's got 2 touchdowns and we're probably not having this conversation, but I wouldn't be worried if someone is willing to deal him and you feel like you have to overpay a little. I'm still on board for that. Emmanuel Sanders is good. And apparently Josh Allen has learned that athletic tight ends are a real problem for defenses.
They're great.
And defenses are rightly so focusing on Josh Allen running and Stefon Diggs. And I think they're now learning, well, that's not going to work anymore because Emmanuel Sanders is pretty good. This Dawson Knox guy is pretty good. I think good things are on the horizon for Diggs.
Yeah. Nope, I certainly agree. I think that is. I'm glad we're in lockstep, Clark, because it feels always good. It feels good for us to be in agreement. All right, let's wrap it up with some waiver wire talk. Who are some people, if not just one guy, who you're targeting off waivers this week, Clark?
So for me, it's Daryl Williams. I'm gonna go super hard for this one. A kind of maybe. It's hard to bet on the Texans, but Chris Moore had a really good game. If you are super desperate at wide receiver and your league is super deep, he's someone to look up. Had a decent start to his career and has kind of disappeared and is back. And outside of Brandon Cooks, the Texans are, the cupboard is kind of.
They could use another wide receiver.
Yeah, but really, Daryl Williams, I've been really hesitant on. I bought into Samaje Perine and spent a lot of fab on him, and Chuba Hubbard was a little hesitant, but I think Williams is going to give us several weeks as not an RB1 like the RB. I mean, like a top 6 RB.
Damn, that is well worth your fab and certainly within his possibilities of outcomes. I have a couple of guys who I just want to rattle off. First of all, I think I mentioned Kadarius Toney last week as my guy, but if you have still not added Kadarius Toney, like I don't know what more this guy can do for you. 31% rostered in sleeper leagues. He has now had back-to-back weeks with just huge fantasy performances. This week, of course, against Dallas, 13 targets, 10 catches, 189 yards. Like the man is out there on the field making plays all over the place. And like I said earlier, Kenny Golladay injured. Darius Slayton is still injured. Sterling Shepard is still injured. Like this Giants receiving core is so wafer thin that all of these targets are going to get funneled through Kadarius Toney. And he has the athleticism to make them happen. So certainly I would be going to get adding Kadarius Toney. He's one of my top waiver targets this week. But also I wanted to name a few other guys for those who maybe are in deeper leagues and having a little more difficulty finding guys in order to get. And that is first of all for the Bears. Now Damian Williams did come in and was their top back in terms of fantasy production with David Montgomery sidelined. But it should be noted, Khalil Herbert, who is a rookie for the Bears, had 18 touches, 75 yards, and played actually more snaps than Damian Williams this past week for the Bears. So, and he's only 21% rostered. Damian Williams, of course, after that big week last week, 80% rostered in sleeper leagues. So he is a guy who I think if this is going to be maybe more of a split backfield than we anticipated, Khalil Herbert is certainly a guy who is worth targeting. And then for the Lions, go ahead, Clark.
Yeah, just a note on Herbert. He looked really good.
He looked good.
I mean, he super quick, ran with power, didn't miss any blocks in pass protection, like anything obvious. I'm not an expert. I didn't all 22 every game, but and from the tweets that I'm seeing, I hate to say this and not give someone credit, but I can't remember. They split the work about 50-50. Yeah. And so it wasn't a clear Williams number 1, Herbert number 2. It was a clear we're going to rotate these guys.
Yeah. Williams had 18 touches, 84 yards, and 1 touchdown. And like I said, Herbert, 18 touches, 75 yards. So split the touches. Williams saw some work in the passing game, which Herbert didn't, but that's maybe the one advantage. And then the other guy in a deep wide receiver target is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's had 2 good weeks now, seeing 8 targets. He had 7 catches and 65 yards against the Vikings this week. And then the week prior against the Bears, 6 catches for 70 yards, 19% rostered in sleeper leagues. And Jared Goff has started as he's gotten more comfortable in this offense, I guess he's becoming more reliant on his wide receivers and targeting them more. Also not Cleve Raymond, Quintez Cephas, I think broke his finger or collarbone. And so is also going to miss time, which narrows down the Lions passing tree. And they get the Bengals in week 6, who just got absolutely torched by Aaron Rodgers and the Packers passing game.
Yeah, the Lions have pissed off the football gods. I mean,
they really have. I don't know what, how many more tears Dan Campbell needs to shed before the gods take pity on him.
Like, I'm not a Lions fan. I don't care. I mean, I liked Barry Sanders back in the day, but you know, this is mean. They are losing like every game in heartbreaking fashion. Anyway, okay, for fantasy, Jared Goff hasn't been the laughing stock that a lot of people made him out to be at the beginning of the year. They are moving the ball, and they are a functional NFL team. They are better than 0-5.
Yes.
And so with St. Brown coming on a little bit, I think that bodes well for them. I think that bodes well for Hawkinson too. Like, an offense it's really hard for it to run through one guy unless you're just like the best of the best, like a la Alvin Kamara. And oh no, Nick's favorite from Green Bay.
Aaron,
200
Devonte
yards
Adams
receiving.
Yeah, Devonte Adams. It was literally, I mean, it blows my mind that week in and week out, Aaron Rodgers throws like 15 targets to Devonte Adams, and somehow he always, like, it's just like Devonte Adams somehow always is like getting you 150 plus yards and a touchdown. It's ridiculous. You'd think they'd cover the guy.
Yeah, but don't let the Lions scare you off of St. Brown. Like, they are playing okay, right? Like, it's not great, but I mean, I bet they'd beat the Jets. You know, I mean, there are a lot of teams that I feel like the Lions would beat that are ahead of them in the win-loss column.
Certainly. And in close games, like when it actually matters, the offense is going to be moving the ball, as opposed to like if they just are in blowouts and they're just like, man, who even cares anymore? Let me see. I was going to bring up the Lions schedule and see, because I know they play the Bengals, they play the Rams, they play the Eagles next 3 weeks. So the Bengals, though, is a really good matchup. That's a great matchup.
Bengals and Eagles are winnable, I think, for them. I mean, they're all winnable. It's the NFL, but like I wouldn't be too surprised.
Oh my God, the Rams. That's a Matt Stafford revenge game, and a Jared Goff revenge game, and a Michael Brockers revenge game.
That's so awkward.
That's good. It's going to be so awkward. I love it.
That's like the
is it in Detroit?
New spouse coming to the wedding or something. It's like, ugh.
Oh, it's at LA. Love it. The new spouse coming to the wedding,
or like
the old spouse,
stepmom or something coming to the. I don't know. It's just that's going to be awkward.
It's just awkward. That's the moral of the story. Awesome. Well, there you go. That's all we got for you this week. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice, and do drop us 5-star reviews. It really goes a long way to helping us get in front of people. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself on Twitter at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark, and make sure you check out all the amazing content we're putting out over on the site at NerdBallFF.com. Until next week, my fellow nerds.